Warning: the following audio drama contains adult themes and scenes of intense violence. Listener discretion is advised. Previously.
Master, your wisdom and expertise would be better suited to protecting our home.
A fresh look at the Western school may also tell us much about who they are and why they are attacking.
You do an old man proud.
You are in conclave. I locked you in personally. You cannot be here.
I told you, I am everywhere, and I control everything, and through me, all souls in Europe shall bow.
Break camp. I want them to think we've gone.
We are here to retrieve my mother. She was brought in a few weeks ago.
They discovered our hidden entrances. Who knows how long they had been observing us and able to keep themselves from our awareness.
The attackers didn't kill these children. They did.
This Magistrum took her own life here. She's still holding the blade. These attackers came for what we know, not for who we are.
Even though it has been generations since these tunnels have been used, they will at least deliver us on the banks of the eastern slopes. Let us take the master copies of our texts, so that they may be preserved, and burn the rest. May it also confuse our attackers into believing we have destroyed our knowledge, as was done by our brethren in the West.
Eye of the Beholders. Episode 5. Ambush. Aaron, Samantha, and Rachel had spent a few days gathering the Muein dead in the corridors and chambers of the Western School along the rocky coast of northern Spain. They piled the corpses into a massive heap outside on a natural flat rock outgrowth the school used as a courtyard overlooking the sea. After they had lit the stack afire, the trio sat, held hands, and hummed a requiem. The smoke billowed away from the hillside, twisting and widening across the breaking waves of the ocean, rolling in from the infinity of the Atlantic. Back at the school in the Alps, another column of smoke spiraled into the skies, fortunately blending seamlessly with the clouds. On closer look, the blaze creating the awesome vapor was a huge bonfire being fed by the elimination of the school's knowledge, recorded in its books, scrolls, and other writings. Muein guardians, at the behest of the master guides, had collected all but the essential tomes and were tossing them into the inferno. They didn't weep. They didn't fret. They looked on, knowing that their actions were a safeguard against the appropriation of their knowledge and skill being stolen by an approaching evil. Besides, the foundational texts were still safe. While the fire of burned books ascended higher into the sky, below, in the catacombs, master copies of the most sacred texts were locked into gilded chests and carried away, being escorted by Master Ishraq. At the same time, students and families calmly made their way into the eastern tunnels. It seemed like a never-ending group of humanity. Wearing furs and carrying rucksacks, they were indeed abandoning their sacred mountain home. Twilight settled on the Western School as Aaron, Samantha, and Rachel continued to sit in solemn occasion before the cremation bonfire of the Muein dead. They each had their eyes closed in respectful prayer.
We will endure, as all life endures.
Samantha heard the pull of wood coming from the cave entrance back into the compound, off to her far right. Within a half second, she twisted and caught the arrow before it could staple her. Back in the Alps, 3 French knights stealthily made entrance into one of the Muein tunnels. The path was lit with torches, per usual temple practices. They turned into another corridor and were met by a Muein guardian. The guardian advanced. With lightning speed, he kicked and punched, evading every swipe of their swords, handling all 3 with a rather calm repose, as if the fight were somewhat like child's play. 2 of the 3 knights fell in short order, unable to best him. The guardian quickly disarmed the 3rd, then grabbed the warrior in a headlock. He shoved the knight against the wall and reached for his ear. An unexpected sword came down and chopped off the guardian's arm before he could connect. The Muein acolyte hunkered over, racked with pain and shock, revealing Renier wielding the bloody blade. The guardian fell, mortally defeated. Amidst the darkening twilight of the Spanish coast, Samantha, Aaron, and Rachel tumbled and rolled to avoid the swords and arrows darting all about them. After Samantha caught the initial dart, the trio dove in to take on the contingent of Gascons and knights being led by Pierre. Fast kicks, some low, some high, hand-to-hand maneuvers never before seen by Europeans, but now somewhat recognized by the intruders and more easily defensible. Samantha and Aaron recognized this group from the forest camp, Rachel from the initial invasion that murdered her new community.
Don't let them touch you! They're devilry!
Back in the Alps, the fight here was also in full swing. 2 Muein guardians kicked and disarmed another string of invaders. Just when it seemed they had prevailed, arrows shot from the darkness. One of the guardians fell, while the other still managed to catch the dart and hurled it back to impale one of the advancing raiders. At the Western School, Aaron, Samantha, and Rachel had already sustained bloody gashes. But thanks to their focus and detachment during the battle, nothing yet marked a sign of their own impending deaths. While disarming a particularly nasty Gascon, Rachel caught sight of what appeared to be a lone figure wearing a glowing white robe, standing just inside the entrance back into the caves. When the individual realized he had been noticed, he turned in, as if beckoning, disappearing into the shadows of the interior rocks.
Follow me! This way!
Samantha took out the warrior before her. Aaron expertly avoided his attacker, and they joined Rachel, continuing to fight while she guided them back inside. In the Alps, a lone guardian repelled a French warlord. As he raised his leg to deliver the final blow, Renier interrupted, removing the Muein's leg, then taking the rest of his life. Arrows darted around Samantha, Aaron, and Rachel as they raced into the Grand Gallery. They had managed to break free of the attacking group, rushing in full retreat. Rachel again spotted a stranger dressed in a white robe, this time standing at the entrance to another tunnel. The figure turned inside.
This way.
She led them into the corridor. In the Alps, Renier and his squad flooded out of the catacombs and filled the main courtyard. Muein guardians atop platforms and ramparts immediately showered them with flame-tipped arrows. Shields and armor protected most. Then a second French invasion team emerged from another corridor, a mixture of infantry and archers, returning fire against the Muein acolytes. Renier caught sight of the massive bonfire and knew what it meant.
Shit.
A series of men-at-arms appeared beside him, having brought a battering ram with them.
This way.
While ducking and avoiding the volley of arrows, he led the troop up a flight of steps toward the library tunnel. Meanwhile, in the eastern tunnels of the Alpine colony, evacuees rushed calmly to escape, being led by one of the Guardian Masters. Master Ishrak turned off into another corridor, leading those carrying the treasure chests of the Master Texts after her. Back in Spain, Rachel led Aaron and Samantha through the large tunnel, running at a sprint.
They'll have more waiting outside.
We'll take the lead.
Rachel slowed, allowing Samantha and Aaron to move ahead while she kept the rear. In the Alps, Renier and his squad bust down the library door with the battering ram. Renier raced in to see the shelves had already been emptied. He seethed with rage. Samantha, Aaron, and Rachel continued through the passage. As they passed an adjoining tunnel, Rachel saw once again someone standing in the shadows, wearing a white robe. She stopped, stepped closer, and was gobsmacked to see it was Eloan, looking warmly at her. Though the library was empty, Renier still wasn't ready to concede. He knelt, placed his hands on the floor, then closed his eyes to concentrate. The troops watched this strange behavior with wonderment. Meanwhile, Rachel stepped ever closer to her former love.
Yes, it is I. Do not be afraid.
Renier and his team flew down the steps, returning to the main courtyard, where the battle still raged. Avoiding impacts, he found the entrance to the eastern evacuation tunnels.
Onward, here!
Several knights broke off from the Muein assault to join him, while others remained behind to supply cover. Meanwhile, on the mountain range's eastern slope, the evacuees emerged onto a snowy hillside and began their descent to the safety of the valleys below. Back at the Western school, Aaron looked back to see his mother standing still, looking into another cave, yards behind him and Samantha. He stopped.
Mother! Mother, what are you doing?
Rachel!
At that same moment, Renier didn't stop to consider where to run when he and his team encountered the fork in the tunnels. He led them confidently to the corridor where Ishrak had spirited the texts. Meanwhile, Rachel continued staring, galvanized by Eloan's presence. Aaron and Samantha rushed back to her.
Rachel, they will be here any moment.
Mother?
No. I must stay.
Aaron and Samantha were flabbergasted.
I have lost every man I have ever loved. I shall not lose you, too.
You won't. Now we must go.
He tugged her arm, but she was unmovable.
They are coming!
Ishraq was confounded, startled. She halted, along with those carrying the chests of Muein texts.
How did they find us?
Protectors.
A dozen Muein moved into attack position as Renier and his team swarmed in. Master Ordonio and Ishraq joined in on the defense. Their moves were lightning fast, simultaneously fluid. Still, it was clear Renier's team had learned from their earlier assaults of the Western School. Renier himself was relentless. And it was that same sense of unabated bloodlust that kept Rachel from giving in to Aaron's pleas.
If you are swarmed from the front and also from the back, you will not survive.
Hell, we won't.
Mother!
I promise I will always be with you.
The remark hit Aaron like a ton of bricks. He remembered saying the exact same thing to her in his other life as Elowan. He also knew it meant that her death was near. He hesitated, then looked at Samantha.
We go.
What?
Aaron suddenly gave Rachel a bear hug.
He is already here.
I know.
He pulled away, then took off ahead.
We go.
Though unsure of why they were leaving her behind, Samantha hurriedly hugged Rachel. Rachel kissed her, and Samantha abandoned her to rejoin Aaron. Rachel turned her gaze back down the tunnel, awaiting the attackers. Within minutes, Aaron and Samantha had emerged from the cave and onto the hilltop grounds. They were instantly met with more knights. Nonetheless, they remained determined. Aaron fought with a focused fury. In the Alps, Renier's team had learned from the previous skirmishes. The arms and legs of the Muein protectors became prizes to be removed during the course of the engagement. They no longer fought like brutes, but dexterous assassins. Rachel, too, could see the same happening with the warriors swarming her. She fought peacefully, knowing she only need delay them to give Aaron and Samantha time to escape. The skirmish didn't at all overwhelm her. Instead, she smiled. Her mind clearly turned toward the future. With each block or hit, she let herself go. Her attachments to material life being mentally and spiritually cut away, allowing Pierre's team to collapse her onto her knees. Like many of the Muein protectors around the prized chests, except these warriors were now missing hands and feet, in addition to their lives. Only Ishraq remained standing, her white robes stained with the remains of her Muein brethren, standing as a lone sentry over the boxes.
This knowledge cannot be fully understood without the proper foundations. It will do you no good.
Renier and his knights advanced. For poor Ishraq, There was no escape. But for Samantha and Aaron, after removing a couple of knights from their horses, they stole the stallions and hurried away. Pierre and his soldiers dragged Rachel back out into the open air, where the flames of the Muein cremation still raged. Several knights kept their sword tips at her head, making sure she didn't make a move against those dragging her.
Now you get what all witches deserve.
Rachel suddenly planted her feet, stopping them. Perhaps it was a hope the tune not only would help herself, but also her family left behind in the Alps. As the evacuees ran into a contingent of papal soldiers waiting for them as soon as they reached the valley, the Muein were easily outnumbered. Pierre could see Rachel was giving up, yet why she hummed the song he couldn't fathom. Still, he allowed those holding her to let go. When they did, Rachel looked toward the fire and smiled. Back at the base of the Alps, Golda watched in horror as several Muein were butchered by the papal army, while others were taken prisoner. She fell into the writhing grasp of 3 warriors.
Take her! Bind her!
Just as she was about to fight, she saw 2 Master Guardians slaughtered by sword and bow. She fell without resistance into the arms of her captors. At the same time, beyond the Pyrenees Mountains, Rachel had placed her back to the roaring fire of burning Muein brethren. The flames were already licking at her shoulders and spine. She raised her arms, then closed her eyes, to which she then gave way, falling backward into the flames, fully engulfed by the inferno. Pierre and his men gawked in awe. Though the night was as black as sackcloth, with a good 10 torches held by fellow invaders, Renier was able to haul the half-dozen Muein chests out of the compound and begin the descent down the slope of the mountain. He and his squad were bloody, bruised, but by the grit of their determination and unyielding fortitude and the fierceness of battle, they were the victors against the Muein fortress. By daybreak, Weimark still hadn't reached the valley forest, though he raced through every town as fast as his steed could carry him. As did Samantha and Aaron, the duo sped through fields, into deep forests, across creeks and rivers, losing their venomous pursuers. for the captured Muein on the eastern slopes of the Alps. The papal army had them rounded up, if they weren't immediately killed during a bout of resistance. By early sunrise, 20 of the monks were tied to stakes, including Golda. Many brethren already had their eyes closed in peaceful meditation. No one seemed marred by fear of what was surely to come. It was something the papal commander and his team had never before witnessed, making them quite uneasy.
At even this very moment, your kind makes prayer to your heathen devils. This makes the conducting of a trial not necessary, your bond with Satan purely evident, as is the snow covering these mountains.
You mistake their appearance.
I mistake nothing. You spit in the face of Holy Christ and deny the authority of his almighty church.
Because the church has no authority, other than what the people give it. Your buildings crumble and fall with age, while the force of life forever rises up, eternal. That is God. And that is what these people blend with.
Blend? Even your words condemn you, witch. You either fall under God's grace.
He lifted a blazing torch to her face.
Or you don't.
Golda grinned.
Grace of life begets more life. Yet here you are, hoping to end ours.
She flashed him a challenging glance. Who she was confronting was on the right side of history here.
A burned forest always returns.
Only if God wills it.
With that, he threw the torch onto the kindling at Golda's feet. The other soldiers stepped forward and lit afire the remaining trees and shrubs beneath the moon. The acolytes at first resisted, but they were only human. While some screamed, others calmly let go, seeing their already deceased brethren coming to rescue their departing spirits. As the blaze ascended to Golda's cheeks, she spied through the flames the spirit of Master Ishrak, looking as real and solid as anyone, with a faint glow emanating from her back. She was approaching, smiling, coming to remove Golda's soul from her burning body. Aaron's stomach suddenly twisted and churned. His mind felt struck by a massive burst of lightning. He bucked and puked from atop his horse and careened off.
Aaron!
She swiftly tended to him, finding him knocked out cold. Upon fast inspection, she discovered the back of his head bloodied from hitting a rock, making the injury possibly a grave one.
No!
A sinister feeling washed over her, as if coming on the wind. She stood, and the world began to spin. Faster, faster, until she too collapsed into unconsciousness. At nearly the same moment, Weimark was guiding his horse halfway across a river. Like Samantha, a sinister force invaded his spirit from upon the breeze. It instantly sent him spiraling, falling off the stallion and landing face down in the water. The coolness of the river kept him from blacking out. Frantic, he swam to the shore and crawled upon his hands and knees. The air continued to thicken. He recognized it as the demise of the Alpine school and his beloved wife.
No, 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 no.
But in the bustling city of Avignon, the streets near the palace of the popes were choked with cheering citizens. All heads were turned to the Cathedral Notre Dame des Doms. Pierre Roger de Buffo, cardinal previously sequestered by Pasquis, now sat as the newly elected Pope Gregory XI at the front of the nave in the cathedral. He held a long scepter, mainly for the purpose of the ceremony. Protodeacon placed the papal crown on his head, while other cardinals and archbishops surrounded him, de Boulogne and Pasquis among them. Pope Gregory shot a quick glance Pasquis' way, knowing this election was his doing. De Boulogne tried not to acknowledge Pasquis and made good on keeping a safe distance from him. Later, Pope Gregory stood from atop a high open balcony and waved at the throngs of cheering crowds on the streets below. He turned back into the antechamber to see Pasquis waiting. The Pope was startled by his presence. He shouldn't be in here.
You will pen a letter to the King of France, stating that today they named me
by the method of the Holy Spirit.
King Charles read the note aloud while sitting in the main throne room of the Louvre Palace, Pasquis standing before him.
And so the Lord still favors the French to rule his temporal kingdom.
I am blessed by my Lord's grace.
With the routing of the English at Limoges and the arresting of their treachery in trying to invade from the Alps, it won't be long till he has restored all your lands and your wealth, in accordance with your power as granted by him.
Charles stared deeply at Pasquis. It was clear Pasquis had supreme confidence in his prophecy.
You are no doubt ready for when God gives his word.
Charles slowly nodded. Pasquis bowed, then turned on his heel and strutted away. As he left the chamber, he passed Duguay-Claude as he was strutting in. Their eyes met, a message passing between them. Duguay-Claude gave the cardinal a wry smile. Servants unloaded the Muein chests from transport carriages and hauled them into Pasquis' palatial Paris villa. Renier and his lieutenants hovered over their arrival, following the chests inside.
Place them in the library.
Moments later, the servants dropped the chests in the center of the great room, then quickly left. Philip edged close to one of the containers.
Let's see what was so difficult to take.
He reached for the lid, but Renier arrested him.
Only upon his arrival, not before.
Philip saw the intensity in his gaze, so nodded and backed away, joining the other 5 knights alongside him. Outside, Pasquis stepped down from the coach, having just arrived. The butler whispered into his ear. Upon hearing the news, Pasquis rushed inside. Pasquis hurried down the hall, then threw the doors open and entered the library. He held his arms wide and accepted Renier in embrace, kissing his cheeks.
The Lord has blessed you as always.
Yes, Your Eminence.
Pasquis examined the chests, then eyed the remaining warriors.
Thank you, gentlemen. Your contribution to this crusade will be greatly rewarded.
Eminence!
Stall your horses and enjoy some wine in the drawing room. I'll have the servants bring cakes for your bellies.
Renier nodded in approval toward his men, and they quickly departed. Pasquis and Renier circled the newly acquired treasure.
Considering the steps they took to protect them, the very keys of God's knowledge must exist in those boxes.
Yes.
Too bad Angelin isn't here for this.
And it is a good thing that he isn't, with all your other men walking around.
Pasquis knelt to open the first chest.
The answers inside these trunks will give us all we have looked for, so that we may fulfill God's wishes for our family.
He threw the top open, reached in, and pulled out a thick book. He fumbled with the locking mechanism, but finally succeeded in opening it. His lips spread in a wide smile, anticipating the revelations he was about to uncover. He opened the tome wide, then suddenly looked baffled.
What is this?
Confused, Renier came up behind, looking at the writing over his shoulder. Pasquis flipped through several pages, seeming more distraught with each glance.
It is written in some language we cannot read.
Renier turned away, recalling what Ishraq said about not having the foundation to understand the material.
Shit.
Pasquis dropped the book, then rustled through a few others in the chest. They were all written the same.
Without somebody who knows this is useless.
He stood, drilling into his brother with a fiery stare.
I will go back there, find somebody who can read this and return them here.
Not here. How can you be sure anybody is left?
Oh, there aren't, thanks to the support you provided. But there might be others who come looking.
Pasquis paused, considering the proposal. It was sound.
Bring them to me in Avignon. I'll have a special place for them there.
He stepped toward his brother, stopping only inches from Renier's face.
They only need be kept breathing until they arrive.
Next time.
Where am I?
You are in the infirmary of Saint Dominique in Santa Pau.
What do you do here?
Prayer, devotion to God, a brotherhood to deliver His word wherever we can to save others.
Word travels fast that young monks are being possessed. They scream, weep uncontrollably. Then they commit the most mortal of sins.
They were good boys. Good boys.
I'm sorry about Rachel, Father. I'm so...
It's not your fault.
And I had to leave Aaron.
Some people might fear the workings of witchcraft with you.
I only wish to be the brightest light that can be, as a flower wishes to glorify the nature of its creation and the blooming of its petals.
How much time do you think we have?
If they have already opened the books, not much. They will come looking for survivors.
Good. Then we won't have to go looking for them ourselves.